The sun sets over the ziggurat, casting long shadows across the bustling streets of Babylon. Merchants pack away their wares beneath the shadow of Ishtar's gate. Soldiers patrol with spears glinting in the fading light, and slaves scurry about on errands for their masters. Above this vibrant hum of life looms the silent threat of Babylonian justice. For in this empire, famed for its gardens and astronomy, law was as stern as the bricks of its walls. On the banks of the Euphrates, a man accused of theft trembles as he is bound with ropes. His neighbors watch silently, for they know what comes next. The guards lead him to a riverbank where the waters churn like a living god. By decree of the king, the man will be cast into the river to face divine judgment. If he survives, the gods declare his innocence. If not, his guilt is sealed by drowning. This was the justice of Babylon, swift, theatrical, and often brutal. It was a system where human law intertwined with divine will, where punishment was both a legal sentence and a ritual act. The Code of Hammurabi, carved into stone nearly 4,000 years ago, remains one of the most detailed legal codes in human history. Yet, behind its measured lines of if-then clauses lies a world where punishment was as much about spectacle as about order, as much about fear as about fairness, as Hammurabi himself inscribed on his stele, that the strong might not oppress the weak, and that justice be done in the land. I established these laws. But justice in Babylon often wore the face of cruelty. Law in stone, the world of Hammurabi's code. Before we plunge into the punishments themselves, we must first understand the foundation upon which Babylonian justice rested, the Code of Hammurabi. Carved into a black diorite stele over 7 feet tall, the code was erected in public view around 1754 BCE. At its summit, a relief shows King Hammurabi receiving the laws from Shamash, the god of justice, whose flames radiate divine authority. This was no ordinary set of decrees. It was a declaration that law came not from men alone, but from the gods themselves. To break the law, then, was not merely a crime against society, it was a sin against heaven. The code contains 282 laws, covering everything from trade and property to marriage, slavery, and crime. Its famous principle, lex talionis, the law of retaliation, is best remembered in the phrase, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But the punishments extend far beyond simple symmetry. They reveal a society deeply concerned with hierarchy, property, and the maintenance of order. One of the most striking features of the code is that punishment was not equal for all. Justice in Babylon was tiered according to social class: the awilu, free men of high status; the mushkenu, commoners; and the wardu, slaves. The same crime could carry very different consequences depending on who committed it and against whom. If an awilu struck another awilu, he might pay a fine, but if he struck a mushkenu, he would pay less. If he struck a slave, less still. Conversely, if a slave struck a free man, the punishment could be mutilation or death. This hierarchy reflected Babylon's rigid social order, where law did not protect all equally but reinforced the divisions of class. This inequality extended to family relations. A son who struck his father could have his hands cut off, while a father who abused his son might face no punishment at all. The family, like society, was a hierarchy under divine sanction, and punishment served to reinforce that hierarchy at every turn. What made Babylonian punishment so memorable was not only their severity, but their visibility. The laws often prescribed punishments designed to be seen, remembered, and retold. A thief might lose a hand. An adulterer might be drowned before a watching crowd. A dishonest builder might be crushed beneath the very house he constructed. These punishments were not simply about retribution, they were performances. They taught lessons to the community, reminding everyone that the gods watched and that the king's authority extended to every corner of life. The philosopher Michel Foucault, in reflecting on ancient justice, might have called this the spectacle of the scaffold, the public display of power through pain. But for the Babylonians, it was more than spectacle. It was a ritual dialogue with the divine. If the gods were just, then justice must be visible, brutal, and unavoidable. At the heart of the code lies the principle of lex talionis. Law 196 declares, "If a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out." Law 197 follows, "If he break another man's bone, his bone shall be broken." To modern eyes, this may seem savage, but in context, it represented both justice and restraint. Before such codifications, vengeance might spiral endlessly between families and clans. Hammurabi's law limited retaliation, no more, no less. If a man killed, he could be killed, but his family would not be slaughtered in return. In this sense, the code was both brutal and stabilizing, yet even here, class distinctions intruded. If a noble put out the eye of a commoner, he might only pay a fine of silver. True reciprocity was reserved for equals. For others, wealth could substitute for flesh. Justice was therefore not blind. It saw clearly the ranks of Babylonian society. Many punishments in Babylon were designed not only to satisfy human law, but to consult or appease the gods. The river ordeal, one of the most dramatic forms of judgment, illustrates this. If a man was accused of sorcery, theft, or adultery, but evidence was uncertain, he might be cast into the Euphrates. If he drowned, guilt was confirmed. If he swam free, innocence was declared, and his accuser could even be punished in turn. The river, sacred to the god Enki, became a divine judge, washing away lies and revealing truth. This ritual underscores how deeply law and religion were entwined. Where modern systems seek evidence, Babylon sought divine signs. Justice was not about forensic proof, but about cosmic order. The gods, not men, had the final say. Hammurabi's stele, now housed in the Louvre Museum, survives as one of the most enduring symbols of ancient law. Its words echo across millennia, shaping later traditions from biblical law to Roman codes. Yet, behind its noble inscription, that the strong might not oppress the weak, lies a system where punishment was often severe, public, and merciless. Punishments of the body, branding, mutilation, and amputation. If Hammurabi's code etched justice into stone, Babylonian punishments etched it into flesh. To break the law was often to mark the body permanently, turning the offender into a living proclamation of his crime. Unlike execution, which ended a life, these punishments ensured the criminal carried the sentence every day, visible to his community, and, in the Babylonian mind, visible to the gods. In Babylonian society, the body was not a private possession but part of the public order. To injure another was to unbalance the community. To damage the body of the offender was to restore equilibrium. When Law 195 of Hammurabi's code declares, "If a son has struck his father, they shall cut off his hand," it is more than retaliation. The hand was not only the instrument of violence, but the symbol of filial disobedience. Removing it both punished the son and erased the offense from the social fabric. Other laws followed the same logic. Law 218. If a physician makes a large incision with an operating knife and kills the patient, or opens a tumor with an operating knife and destroys the eye, they shall cut off his hands. Here too, the hand is both the tool of crime and the site of retribution. A doctor whose hand killed must lose that hand, transforming his punishment into a grim symmetry of action and consequence. By such measures, Babylonian law did not simply punish crime. It rewrote the offender's body as text, each scar a reminder of justice enacted. Slaves in Babylon could be branded with marks of ownership, often on the forehead, making them forever identifiable. This practice extended to criminals as well. A thief might have his forehead branded, ensuring that even if he avoided execution, he would never again pass unnoticed in society. Branding made the body itself a form of public record, a permanent inscription of shame. The Babylonian obsession with visibility is evident here, whereas a fine or private imprisonment might pass unseen. Branding ensured that punishment walked daily in the marketplace, a human billboard of law's authority. Hands, ears, noses, tongues, all could be severed depending on the crime. The mutilation was rarely random, it always symbolized the offense. A thief's hand was cut off, for it had stolen. A slanderer's tongue might be cut out, for it had lied. The symmetry reinforced the principle of order. Each crime contained its own punishment, waiting to be enacted by the king's decree. One chilling clause of Hammurabi's Code, Law 253, states, "If a man has hired an ox and killed it through negligence, he shall replace ox with ox. If he cannot, they shall cut him in half." Though scholars debate whether this law was symbolic or literal, its meaning is clear. Life and property were bound together, and negligence could cost not just money, but the very integrity of the body. Unlike later legal traditions that emphasized individual responsibility, Babylonian justice often extended punishment to families. If a builder's house collapsed and killed the owner's son, the builder's son might be executed in return. If a man struck a pregnant woman and she died, his own daughter could be killed in compensation. These laws shock modern sensibilities, yet they reveal a world where family was not merely kinship, but an extension of the self. To strike a man was to wound his entire household. To kill his child was to wound his future. Justice required balance, even if the scales tipped across generations. Clay tablets from Mesopotamia preserve glimpses of real punishments. One record from the Old Babylonian period describes a man accused of theft who had his ears cut off and was paraded through the city. Another mentions slaves branded for attempting escape, their new marks signifying both guilt and ownership. Such records remind us that the Code of Hammurabi was not an abstract ideal, but a living practice. These punishments were not simply written in stone, they were lived in blood and flesh. By targeting the body, Babylonian punishments created fear that outlasted the act itself. A thief might hesitate to steal not only from fear of death, but from fear of losing a hand, a permanent disability in a society dependent on labor. A son might hesitate to strike his father, knowing the cost would be mutilation. Punishment thus became preventive, written into the body as deterrence. The French historian Pierre Briant once noted that in ancient empires, punishment was a pedagogy. The body of the criminal became a lesson for the living, teaching obedience through terror. In Babylon, every scar was a textbook. Though millennia separate us from Babylon, echoes of its punishments endure. The principle of bodily mutilation as justice appears in later Assyrian and Persian codes, and even in medieval Europe, branding, amputation, and mutilation remained long after Hammurabi's stele was buried beneath the sands, testament to the enduring power of visible punishment. Punishments of death and execution, drowning, fire, and impalement. Perhaps the most famous and uniquely Babylonian punishment was drowning. The river was not merely water, it was a divine judge. The Euphrates and Tigris sustained the land, their floods both blessing and curse. To be cast into the river was to be handed over to the gods, who alone would decide guilt or innocence. Law 2 of Hammurabi's Code states, "If a man has accused another of laying a spell upon him, but has not proved it, the accused shall go to the sacred river. He shall plunge into the river, and if the river overcome him, his accuser shall take his house. If the river show that man to be innocent and he escape unhurt, he who made the charge shall be put to death." Here, drowning was not only punishment but trial. To survive was proof of divine favor. To perish was proof of guilt. The crowd gathered at the banks knew they were watching not merely human justice but cosmic judgment. The ritual was terrifying precisely because it stripped away human appeals. A judge could be bribed, a scribe misled, but the river was incorruptible. Its currents spoke for Shamash and Enki, gods of justice and wisdom. To be hurled into the waters was to stand naked before heaven itself. If water judged, fire consumed. Babylonian law also prescribed execution by burning, a punishment reserved for grave offenses against family and society. Law 110 declares, "If a priestess who is vowed to celibacy enter the wine shop, they shall burn that woman." Why burning? Fire was sacred, the visible breath of the gods. To be burned alive was to be purified through agony, to have one's sin obliterated by divine flame. In a city where temples were lit by eternal fires, burning was more than execution. It was ritual purification. Witnesses would watch as flames devoured the condemned, the crackling fire carrying the soul skyward. To Babylonians, this was justice and warning alike. Impurity could not remain in the land. The fire made crime visible even in death, leaving only ash as testimony. Among the most brutal methods was impalement, a punishment that turned the condemned body into a grisly monument. Law 153 records, "If the wife of a man has caused the death of her husband for the sake of another man, they shall impale her." To impale was not merely to kill, but to display. The victim was pierced by a sharpened stake and raised upright, left to writhe until death claimed them. Their body, suspended above the earth, became a warning visible for miles. Impalement was theatre in its starkest form. The condemned suffering did not end swiftly but lingered, turning execution into prolonged display. For a society deeply concerned with order, such punishment proclaimed that betrayal, murder, and adultery would not merely be punished, they would be annihilated, body and soul. Later, Assyrian kings would adopt impalement on a massive scale, lining roads with skewered captives after conquest. Though Babylon's use was more restricted, the principle was the same: terror through visibility. The human body became a signpost, law written not in stone, but in flesh. While less frequently recorded in Hammurabi's code, later Mesopotamian traditions attest to forms of hanging and crucifixion. These, too, were punishments of spectacle, designed to expose the condemned to public gaze. To hang was to deny burial, leaving the body to scavenging birds and the scorching sun, a fate as shameful as it was fatal. The denial of burial was itself a punishment in ancient Babylon. Proper interment was essential for the soul's journey to the underworld. To die unburied, left for beasts, was to suffer not only in life but in eternity. Thus, execution often carried a double weight: physical death and spiritual damnation.